Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Patty Montojo. I'm a licensed psychologist and manager of our academic and staff assistance program. And I have here with me my colleague who will present herself.
Hi, I'm Dr. Melissa Cordero. I'm also a psychologist at ASAP, and welcome. Thank you for being here.
Today, we will be addressing the emotional impact of returning to work on campus, supporting employee mental health. This was initially provided on August 26, 2020, and also our other practicum clinician, Veronica Franco, was in the presentation as well, helping us with all the logistics. But before I begin, I'd like to first acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. I'd also like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, as well as other Indigenous people present. So let's get started. Okay, some objectives, and I know we have limited time, but some objectives that we'd like to address today are to review ways to support the emotional and psychological well-being of employees who are returning to work on campus, review strategies that help make employees feel less apprehensive about returning and more optimistic about the work environment, improve mental health literacy, and provide ways to talk about mental health, review tools to increase and improve communication, and lastly, to provide ways to build morale and support within departments. First, I'd like to acknowledge that when we transitioned to remote work, there was very little planning. It was a very rapid move. And so I want to acknowledge that phasing workers back into the workspace may create new uncertainties. There will be probably new policies, new routines that need to be created. Employees reacted to remote work very differently. For some employees, it was smooth. It was seamless. They had a desk and their appropriate workspace. And for others, it was, I'm thinking about the working parents, it was really stressful managing parent life and work life all under the same roof. So each employee will react differently when returning to work on campus. For some, they may be very excited. They may be looking forward to returning to the workspace. They could possibly have experienced a lot of social isolation during this time. For others, it may cause increased stress and worry. And so those individuals, those employees may have their own medical health conditions that make them at risk, or also, children or elders in the home, and they're afraid for their health. These are some ways to ease uncertainty and support employee mental health when returning to the workplace. The first one is prepare for the return by supporting employees now. So let's start these conversations, these discussions now, and not wait a week or a few days before the proposed return date. Again, I want to reiterate that we transitioned very quickly to remote work. There was a lot that was out of our control. And so I kind of want to take this opportunity, we want to take the opportunity to emphasize that with the time that we have, let's prepare for these discussions. Second is to take an individualized approach. Understand that each employee is undergoing their own unique stressors and experiences during this pandemic. So what may work for one employee may not work for another within a same department. Empower employees with work flexibility, and we'll go over these in each slide. Involve employees in discussions about their workspace. Lastly, I want to really emphasize that leaders are role models, and help set examples. So I hope that managers and supervisors and colleagues and employees are being those leaders that people look up to. Again, so the first proposed solution to ease uncertainty is prepare for the return now. So understanding that each employee is unique, it's important to offer employees compassion, honesty, and openness. And these are the conversations that hopefully are happening now. Check in with employees and actively listen so that they feel heard. Communicate consistently to reduce employees' uncertainty and build emotional support. And so with more discussion, with more opportunities for communication, the hope is that each person in the conversation, the manager, supervisor, and the employee will be heard, and that there could be a plan in place that will work for both sides.
So as Patty was saying, it's really important to begin to support our employees now. And we want to do that from a place of empathy and a sense of really trying to offer as much support as possible. We only have part of someone's story. So we want to approach each interaction with compassion. There are many layers to this. There isn't just the pandemic, but also just how this has impacted each individual person, either their family life, the structure of having children in school while parents are at work is no longer there or has drastically changed, or having family or friends support with childcare, or with other loved ones that we're caring for is no longer there. And also, some people have been in complete isolation, as well as a lot of people might be grieving right now. There are people that have lost loved ones in their family or their close family circle. And all of us as a collective are mourning the loss of life as we knew it. I also want to bring attention to some that are experiencing the direct impact of racism, discrimination, and community trauma to some of their close-knit communities. And so we also want to just take into account that this is just a few things that I have mentioned, but many other additional layers that people can be experiencing. Next slide. So again, we want to really remember to have compassion for ourselves and each other, empathy and understanding for mistakes, imperfections, and life just being a bit messy. Assume that we're all doing the best that we can. Again, that's for ourselves and others. I know we can be really hard on ourselves if we're not being 100%. And so we may have to give up the expectation of doing exactly what we used to do, or being 100% or doing 100% in the same way as we used to when we were on campus. So we're now in a new normal. We're adjusting to various aspects of our lives. And so we want to really be mindful that we can't maybe just expect the same exact thing that we used to prior to all this. So just taking that into consideration. Next slide.
To go along with that is to take an individualized approach. So I hope and I want to encourage to think beyond a one-size-fits-all approach. Again, what may work for one employee may not work for the other. My hope is, our hope is that that managers and supervisors have the autonomy to help employees develop individualized plans, to help employees contribute to these plans. Employees returning to the workplace may need new approaches to routines that they have lost. And so if we think a long time ago to mid-March, early March, which seems centuries ago, those workplace routines are no longer active. They will no longer be the same. We will not return to the workspace and engage in those routines. So first, there needs to be acceptance. We need to understand that those are lost, and perhaps motivation or interest in making new routines. Managers and supervisors play a key role in supporting mental health and psychological well-being. managers, supervisors are on the front line. So for the most part, most of our consultation services come from managers and supervisors when they are concerned about an employee's mental health. And so I'm hoping, and we will provide the language for this as well, that mental health is being discussed, that when there is a concern about an employee, that there is a referral to ASAP, or if the employee doesn't feel comfortable seeking services on campus, that we are looped in and that we can provide community referrals. And so I'm hoping that through this presentation that managers and supervisors have the language, perhaps some ways to talk about mental health as everyone is really struggling right now in relation to the pandemic.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about what are some common reactions. So anxiety and depression are just a couple. Of course, there are many others, but just to recognize if we ourselves are experiencing this, or if we notice colleagues or supervisees with some of these symptoms, we want to offer support. So there's some common symptoms under anxiety, which include worry, which I'm sure many of us are worried in many different ways. So of course, this is a very natural reaction. We might notice ourselves overthinking or over planning things, just knowing that's part of the anxiety, a way for us to help manage the anxiety. Some of us might have difficulty sleeping, which of course impacts our work. And depression and anxiety do have a lot of overlap as well. But one of the symptoms of depression includes low energy, just not having the energy we used to. Everything is so much harder. It may feel like we're just having to overcome so many more additional barriers to do the simplest thing. This can impact our motivation. It can also make it really difficult to concentrate and focus on one thing, and a combination or an overlap of anxiety and depression can also occur among other symptoms. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you're experiencing this, definitely to reach out to one of us for support, or to let your supervisor know for you're needing support. And we'll also be talking about other ways that supervisors or managers can check in with employees.
To go along with what Melissa said is a possible symptom of depression is suicidality. So that's harm to self. It's actually very common for individuals to experience thoughts of ending one's life or of hurting oneself. And so I've given parts of this presentation in conjunction with UCPD addressing workplace violence prevention, and we encourage employees, we encourage managers and supervisors to ask these difficult questions. This helps us assess the severity of the situation and find the best resources. So asking a simple question, and it doesn't have to start this way. I mean, if there is serious concern, then please ask these questions. But even a simple, how are you? How are you doing? Or if you're seeing a drastic change in behavior or appearance, you know, it seems like there's something going on. Are you okay? But if this is needed, these are some tools, and it's asking, are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking of or planning of harming someone? If safety does not seem like an immediate concern, attempt to connect employee with mental health services. So that's either ASAP on campus, or we can assist with the process of finding a community provider. When someone is experiencing mental health struggles, finding a provider may seem daunting. It may seem overwhelming, so we can help with that process. Also, possibly you can ask, based on what I've seen and experienced with you, I would like to refer you to a professional who can support you. This expresses concern, it expresses support. Or you can contact ASAP right now from my office. I can call for you, or I can call and give them your name and number. Again, I've mentioned many times we have managers and supervisors contacting us and talking about an employee of concern, someone that they've seen a drastic change in behavior and appearance, seen kind of symptoms and want this person to get help. And so we are here for that. The third possible solution to ease uncertainty in employees returning to the workspace is managers and supervisors is empowering employees with work flexibility. And so I understand that each department and each supervisory relationship has their own policies. But overall, generally, managers and supervisors can create favorable work environments by encouraging employee control over certain decisions. And so I'm not saying, one of the questions and concerns that we received when we first provided this presentation was, how do you have a balance? So as a manager and supervisor, how do you create that balance between empathy, concern, and also ensuring that the work is getting done? And that's a difficult question. I mean, Melissa and I understand that it's complicated, but just having these conversations now with employees will make them feel like they are part of the conversation, will empower them to contribute to the decision making, since this pandemic and the effects of this pandemic is impacting all of us, our personal and professional lives. So perhaps it's creating some kind of hybrid work schedule where if school instruction for K to 12 is remote and you have a working parent that you supervise or manage, then perhaps there is some negotiation or conversation about the days that the employee comes to work on campus and the days that the employee is at home assisting their child with remote instruction. So that is one option. I'm not saying that this needs to be done or that this needs to happen, but this is just a possible solution. Also, it's encouraging employees to engage in outdoor activities, recreation, or exercise. Movement, exercise, getting outside, walking. Now that, the pandemic has showed us really what is important in life, and movement and exercise really does affect and improve your mood. It helps manage stress levels. It helps manage anxiety levels or symptoms. And so I'm hoping that that's encouraged in departments as well. Another possible solution is involve employees in discussions about their workspace. Talk with employees about what might change and what they need. Again, we're not returning to what we had, the routines we had in February or March. There's a lot of change that all of us will endure and have to endure as the days go forward. Employees who are informed and participate in decisions about their own space have greater psychological comfort in the workspace. Employers can solicit input regarding individual workspace needs. And so if we're talking about additional disinfection, that will help ease the anxiety, the concern, or the worry among employees. Creating an additional barrier, perhaps, depending on the layout of the department. And also the flexibility to rearrange furniture. And so these are possible solutions that will increase optimism, increase comfort among employees returning to the workspace.
So this is just one way to approach having these difficult conversations. This is a form of compassionate communication. Anytime an issue might arise, it's just a helpful way to bring up certain topics that will hopefully minimize defensive-ness and sort of connect us all to the humanness of just transitioning into this very difficult time. So the first that I'd like to talk about is describing an event factually. So oftentimes we might see something and we may be seeing it through our own lens, which may be very different from someone else's lens. So I have an example here. Let's say you are going into the office and the office feels crowded, there are too many people. Instead of saying something like that where the office feels crowded, we try to break it down to the facts when there are 5 people in the office at one time. So maybe that's something that we can have a more eye-to-eye way of seeing, rather than one person feeling the office is crowded, the other person not feeling that way. So then I like to bring in just how that makes you feel. So we've all heard about I statements. So really taking a moment and connecting to the emotions that are being triggered in you, which could be anxiety. So saying something, I feel anxious. And then trying to empathize with the other person. And I feel like this piece is key, because oftentimes we can be upset for the other person, or at the other person, not thinking that they really understand our position. But if we take a moment and we put ourselves in their shoes and imagine where they might be coming from, then it helps them feel a little more understood. It helps us connect to the humanness in all of this, rather than expecting each other to know what each other needs or to be perfect in any way when we're all trying to figure it out. So an example of this can be, I understand we have to serve our students and we have to be in the office. And then the next piece that I like to talk about is to specify what you need. So oftentimes we know what we don't want, but to really tune in and think, okay, what is it that I do need? What would it take for me to be in this office and feel comfortable and feel safe again? So just offering a solution. So one option is, I would really appreciate if we can discuss the possibility of a rotating schedule, so we only have 3 people in the office at one time. So it just begins to open up a dialogue, and I usually like to have a positive consequence as a result of this, so you can identify the impact that this would have. So an example might be, I feel I would be less anxious and I would be more productive if you could support me with this. So this is just one example, but you can plug in any situation into this compassionate script and hopefully have a more effective communication with either a supervisee or a supervisor.
And I think Melissa provided a great intervention and great tool. And I think both managers and supervisors and colleagues and employees can use that, because again, each employee is unique, and so each employee will have different needs, and in order for employees to feel comfortable, those conversations need to be had. So lastly, it's for leaders to understand that leaders are role models and help set examples. Employees look to leaders during a crisis. And if you take anything from this presentation on my behalf, it's acknowledging that returning to the office isn't a return to the way people previously worked. That will help address your own expectations. That will help have these conversations and perhaps implement new tools, new ways of working in the workspace so that you feel comfortable. As you all know, policies and practices have changed, and they are adapting and changing with the uncertainty of the pandemic's effects. And lastly, it's prepare to be flexible, consistent in communication, and be a role model for showing support and encouraging individual control and decision making.
So this next section talks about building morale and communal support. So we want to create an environment that feels inviting for employees, and given all of the stressors that we're experiencing, we would love to just suggest creating a voluntary space where people can just come together and have an honest, open discussion, either between colleagues or as a department, and share ideas of how to manage some of these stressors. How are some people navigating through some things that are coming up for them? And also ways to really encourage and support each other in practicing self-care. A lot of us have roles on campus where we're either caring for students or for other staff members. And so we tend to forget ourselves in that. And so I want to really stress the idea of just reminding each other and holding each other accountable for practicing some self-care techniques that I'll be going over in a little bit. And also encouraging yourselves and others to reach out for support, even using ASAP services, or we're even thinking about creating a support group for people coming back to work. So we want to make sure that you all feel supported and also encourage each other to remind about the resources that we have on campus.
Mm-hmm.
So some ideas for building morale and communal support are to create a list of self-care activities, maybe collaboratively decide what are some activities you all agree to practice, whether it is after work, whether it's at your lunch hour, or maybe just scheduling a time at the end of each work week, just a few minutes where you all come together and practice a self-care technique. For example, maybe everyone practices an online meditation together and then discusses how that has been impacting them or helping them through some of these stressors. And I used to work in a department where we had a self-care buddy. And so it was just a great way to be held accountable for practicing self-care, for supporting each other in doing that. So it's just one idea I'll throw out there as a way to help build morale and build the communal support. So this next slide just provides some ideas for ways to care for yourself and each other. These are some coping techniques that can be really helpful given everything going on. Given that there is constant change, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of us can be on edge, a little bit on this sort of fight or flight, like what's going to happen next. And so breathing techniques can actually be really helpful to calm and soothe the nervous system. And so at the end of this slide, I will guide us through a breathing technique called pace breathing that can be really helpful in just calming ourselves down a little bit so that we can approach each situation with a little more relaxation and a little more clarity and an ability to be more grounded and present. So I have a few other ideas on here with some hyperlinks that you can click on. So one of them is called thought diffusion. And this is a technique created to help us manage all of the thoughts that we have. I think we have about 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. So that's a lot of thoughts to navigate, especially when we're really worried and we're dealing with a pandemic. And so how do we manage through all of these thoughts? And so there is a technique about that offers ideas on how to create space between us and our thoughts, how to become the observer of our thoughts so our thoughts don't control us. So there is an activity called Leaves on a Stream. And this is a link to a YouTube recording of someone guiding you through it, where you basically imagine a stream with leaves, and that every time you have a worry or a thought that you have no control over or you can't do anything about in that moment, to apply it to a leaf. So then you become sort of the witness and the observer of watching these leaves flow down a stream and having less of a direct impact from these thoughts that maybe you can't do anything about right now, or you can't control what's going to happen in the moment with the information that you have. And so this is a form of mindfulness. It is being the observer of our thoughts without judging them as good or bad, but just as one of our many thoughts that we have a day. And it can really help manage the anxiety that we might be experiencing. So I also have a link for self-compassion meditations and practices. So as Patty and I had mentioned earlier, it's really important to have compassion not only towards ourselves as we go back and try to navigate this new normal, but for each other. And so there are great practices here to help navigate through that if we're feeling really critical of ourselves or of others. There are some wonderful exercises to help us manage through that so that we can be more supportive. And Patty had also mentioned the benefits of exercise, and we will be back on campus, and some of us did have routines where we maybe walked around the lagoon during lunch. So just remembering once again those routines that worked for us, even if they might look a little differently. Being in nature is really important, taking advantage of this beautiful campus, reconnecting with some of those things that really helped us manage our stress prior. And then just another suggestion can be listening to relaxing music. This might be something you have in the office just to help create an ambiance that feels a little more inviting, a little more relaxing given everything that we're going through. So now I'm just going to guide us through a brief breathing exercise. Again, it's called pace breathing. And the reason why it's called pace breathing is because when we exhale, we're actually exhaling longer than we inhale. And so we have to pace the exhale because it's a little unnatural. We don't normally exhale longer than we inhale. And by actually doing that consciously, it slows down the nervous system and brings a sense of calm and relaxation. So I'm going to guide us through this briefly. And just prior to starting, you can maybe place your hand onto your stomach so that we can begin to practice breathing into the diaphragm and just noticing the stomach rising as you inhale and releasing back down as you exhale. So just getting used to that breathing pattern first. And then we'll begin together where I'm gonna lead us through counting. We'll be inhaling for about 3 counts and exhaling for about 5 counts. But again, you can change this to fit your needs. The most important thing is that you exhale longer than you inhale, whatever that combination means to you. So we'll begin to just exhale all the breath out so we can start together. And then we'll begin to inhale through the nose for 1, 2, 3. And then begin to exhale through the nose, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, feeling the belly rising up, 2, 3, and exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, and exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Last one, inhale, 1, 2, 3, and exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take a few natural breaths. You can still breathe in and out the diaphragm. That really helps bring a sense of calm. And just reconnecting with your environment. If your eyes were closed, you can begin to open them again, noticing where you're sitting and just looking around the room as a way to reground ourselves. So just taking a few moments to notice how you feel and the impact that technique had on you, and see if that one works for you, and just see if that's something you want to share with a colleague or commit to practicing throughout the week as a form of coping. So we'll go ahead and move over to the next slide. We'll just talk a little bit more about us and ASAP and what we do.
Thank you, Melissa, for that. That's extremely beneficial. Just a little bit about ASAP. If you're interested in seeking services, if you know of people in your employees in your department, colleagues who need that extra support during this difficult time, or if you're a manager and supervisor who is concerned about an employee. So physically, we're located in human resources, but with remote work, we are 100% operational, and we are 100% Zoom or phone call appointments. And so if you're interested, you can call the number on the slide, you can email the ASAP email, or you can submit the contact us button on our website to start a ServiceNow ticket. But the team consists of myself, Melissa. We always have a doctoral student who is completing their clinical rotation. And for the 2nd year, we have Veronica Franco from CCSP on campus. And we have our wonderful Judy Flanagan, who runs the show. And so she assists with all of the administrative details. And now with Zoom and everything is DocuSign, so we are completely operational, remote teletherapy. She assists through this process, or with this process. A little bit about the services that we provide for those of you that are not familiar. We provide short-term therapy addressing personal and professional stressors. And so now that the two are so intertwined, many times there is stressors in both areas right now. So that is parental stress, anxiety, depression, substance misuse, grief, a lot of pain right now. We provide consultation services to managers, supervisors, administration, in supporting their departments, and also if there is an employee of concern that needs additional assistance. We have a wonderful wellness programming and also additional presentations that we provide during this time. So you may have seen our name a lot recently in the D list, but we've received the feedback that trainings, presentations, bringing outside presenters is what is needed during this time. And we also provide kind of a short introduction to introduction about our services, and we give that to departments as well. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact either myself. My contact information is there. Melissa, Veronica, or our main ASAP contact line is there, including phone number, email, and our website. I want to thank all of you. I know that some of you could not attend the live presentation, but if you have any questions about any of the information that we presented, please do not hesitate to contact us. And Melissa, I'm not sure if you have any last comments.
Just thank you again for joining us, and please reach out if you need any additional support.
Thank you.